difference in terms of the parties as to which one could bring about that could bring about a civil war?
I think both parties hold the potential for it.
Do you think that like Kamala Harris would,
takes two to tango?
Well, actually,
oh my
it takes
God.
two to tango.
Oh my God,
is
bro. I swear Republicans don't live on the same planet, dude. Anyway, we're now going to get back to the Tim Pool, Sam Seder debate, while I go pee really quickly, and then we'll move on to some more news. Obviously, we have Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump tapes, which I think are crazy, and a lot more to cover today. So
companies, politicians will use some kind of special interest, and you can run an ad for any product you want, which is the crazy thing.
Well, yeah, this is what Trump is doing with his watches, right? Like, I'm going to sell 147 watches at whatever it was, 10 grand a pop. And it's basically a way for people to launder money to him, because it's like, all right, I just bought a watch, and that's basically it. And so he knows
you're allowed to buy watches.
Maybe
we should regulate politicians selling products during elections.
I think that would be a great idea, and maybe while they're president as well. But I know
I bought his shoes.
What's that?
I bought his shoes. We were skating in them. Let's talk about like abortion or something. I don't know. Or Israel.
We can talk about Israel if you want. I mean, I'm of the mind of, what we're doing is obscene, and I'm unhappy about it. And I feel like we have two options. One is horrible, and the other one's worse.
I agree.
In terms of these governments. I mean,
do you think we should cut off funding, pull out, and just be done with it?
Well, I think that we should condition aid to Israel. I mean, I think that we should, if we have leverage in any type of situation, we should exercise that leverage. In terms of Ukraine, we had a treaty with them when they gave up nukes in '93, saying that we would protect them in the event of
was it a
Russian aggression? Well, or an agreement.
Right. And the legal distinction matters, I suppose, because...
Well, I mean, it matters in terms of like how perhaps
bilateral security agreement.
I mean, that's you can refer to it as just a bilateral security agreement, and I think that there's.
Oh no, it wasn't even that. The Budapest Memorandum.
I mean, I think that this was operational. It's not obviously a treaty. Treaties can be broken. We saw that with Paris Accords, and well, it's easier obviously if it's a treaty. It needs to be we need to bring the Senate in, but I am I think that aid that we provide for Ukraine should have an exit strategy to it. I haven't seen one, but I also am not convinced that that's been a function of the election.
Haven't we spent more on Ukraine in the past 2 years than we have on Israel in 50?
I don't know.
Comparable.
Probably comparable, I think, at this point.
That's crazy to me. It's fair to point out, too, like, we're not just giving all the money overseas. We make weapons here, and then it has American
100%
jobs.
Yes, 100%.
Wow, Tim Pool's analysis on Ukraine is the greatest threat to mankind has changed quite dramatically. That's weird. I wonder if something significant happened since the last time I watched Tim Pool when he said those words to now he sees a silver lining in the weapons transfers to Ukraine and its impact on the American economy even. What a shocking change of events. Probably nothing happened, right? Like nothing consequential happened in Tim Pool's life, I think, that would have caused them to take this different approach. Like he's starting to come across to me like a real Lindsey Graham type. I haven't been keeping up with Tim Pool. Is there a reason? Because like the last time I saw him, he had such good ideas on Ukraine being the enemy of not only America but the mankind. Seems to me he's seeing the silver lining here.
There's no doubt in my mind that we spend far too much money. So much of our economy is dependent. Eisenhower said, beware the military industrial complex, and his original wording was the Congressional Military Industrial Complex, and you know, I subscribe to that. I do think from a moral standpoint, although I don't think this is controlling, but as a moral standpoint, you know, obviously like one country is being invaded and to some extent occupied, and the other is occupying and completely asymmetrical type of situation, you know, that we have in Israel is just absurd.
I kind of feel like no matter what course we take, the dominoes have been knocked over. The BRICS nations are lining up for their currency. The petrodollar is on the verge of being dismantled. Saudi Arabia has already said not interested. I don't think Trump recovers that. And I think that means Americans better buckle up for a bumpy ride.
I mean, to be fair, you've also said that we're headed towards a civil war in this country so many, many times. And I don't think that's happening.
Well, that's not my opinion. That's just the corporate press. I think it was
it's not your opinion that we're headed into?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I accidentally snorted a piece of chicken into my nose. That's not his opinion. I think Tim Pool has talked about a civil war being imminent more than anything else. Like, if there is one way to like summarize the most consistent talking point that Tim Pool has repeated over and over again, it is the fact that it's happening, and it's happening right now, and it's going to happen tomorrow, and it's happening yesterday.
To a civil war, or hasn't been?
It is not an original idea from Tim Pool that we're on track for a civil war.
Well, I mean, do either one of us have any original ideas? I mean, I didn't come up with single payer.
No, but I just to clarify, my position is I didn't one day just decide for no reason, oh man, I think a civil war is coming. It was like, here we go, Common Dreams. This is a progressive organization. Here you go. The second civil war has already begun. This is a progressive outlet. Right. So when I read progressives, conservatives, The Atlantic,
I think that's more metaphorical. But if you want to claim that you did not mean that there was an actual civil war,
I do.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do think there's going to be a civil war?
10 years, 20 years? I mean, what?
What?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you so we can talk about it. We can go in great detail. For instance, we had a former CIA officer at the write for the Washington Post. The U.S. is on the verge of a civil war. I didn't just make it up. The Atlantic said that they spoke with several national security experts.
Well, there's people also saying that the Earth is flat, but you know,
do they work for the Democratic establishment?
Well, sometimes maybe. I don't know.
Flat earthers in the Democratic Party at the top level. Come on.
I'm saying
like former CIA comes out and says they're concerned, like we are following the trend of other countries towards civil war. I take that seriously. I don't know why I would dismiss like all of these people. A Princeton professor, for instance, said the same thing back in 2018, I think. So when you maybe it's sensationalism.
I think
that's fair.
I think to a certain extent it's like, you know, yes, there were people who said like crime has increased exponentially, but in fact it hadn't. I mean, I think part of what you and I do is we make assessments as to what news is actually sort of like real and what really has real world.
Tim Pool looks at credentials and laughs at them. When it's like a person who's like, I've done vaccine research at the highest level, and I am a well-decorated epidemiologist, and I am warning you, we need to, take COVID seriously. He'd be like, that guy's gay. Obviously, you can't trust credentialed people like this. Tim Pool, when it's civil war, he's like, excuse me, high-level CIA officer who is managing the Civil War department said that it's happening. Yeah. Only when they're engaging in sensationalist rhetoric that they believe, that Tim Pool believes, then he's on board.
Implications for people, and part of what we do is assess that like these things don't, and it's a distraction.
I think you're wrong. I think there's an optimism and a normalcy bias, and the only thing I can really say is Look, I read the news and I opine on it, and I'm wrong about a lot. But I can probably pull up, I don't know, a couple hundred articles from CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, talking about the brink of civil war that is coming to this country that I just did not make up one day. So if I read the New York Times,
These are all right-wingers.
the New York Times,
Ross Douthat?
Oh, sure,
It's
sure.
an opinion piece.
yeah, of course. CNN, you've got Bruce Hoffman, Jacob Ware, Straight Arrow News. I don't know, but there's a poll saying people think we're on the verge of a civil war. The Princeton professor, progressive guy, said the Cold Civil War has already begun. This is back in 2018, and I look at all these things and I say, the worldview of each faction in the United States is divided to a degree that there seems to be no reconciliation. And so now what you have is sitting members of Congress calling for a national divorce, which means nothing. It means civil war. But that was Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean,
She's a lunatic.
we'll call it whatever you want, but when a
Lunatic.
member of Congress is saying something like this, would you?
Oh, I have no doubt. Listen,
do you think if lunatics get elected, we could see?
Okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene also said Jews have space lasers, dude. To be fair, Simple probably agrees with that too. So, like, she said Jewish space lasers were responsible for the fucking wildfires in California. She says a lot of shit, dude. Oh my God, I forgot. She also says that the government has a weather machine. Yeah. Oh God, she says so many insane shit.
See a civil war?
I have no doubt that we have a crop of right-wing Republican lawmakers who are completely nuts.
What
I think that
what
the
about January
American
6th?
What about January 6th?
Do you think a January 6th type event could result in this country reaching civil war?
You mean had they been successful and
let's to kind of depoliticize it. Let's say January 6th, 2025, politician X wins. It could be whoever. I don't know. Let's say let's for the sake of your politics. Let's say Trump loses, and then Trump supporters storm the Capitol once again. This time taking the.
Do you really think? Wait a second, because this is really an important distinction. Do you really think that the likelihood of a mass of Democrats, Democratic voters, would go in and attack the Capitol in the way that
You mean like they did on May 29th, 2020?
You're talking about like BLM?
When they firebombed the White House and forced the president to an emergency bunker and set fire to St. John's Church, injuring hundreds of police officers?
Oh, you're talking about the protests out there? You mean after there was a peaceful protest before the cops moved in?
Regardless of why it happened.
Well,
Like, do I think the far left will firebomb the White House? They did 4 years ago.
Wait a second. One was an assault.
Dude, there is something so funny about the president at the time in his lame duck session refusing to follow regular process and creating an insurrection, albeit a very funny one, because it was the most like diabetic insurrection of all time. Comparing that to like mass protests all around the country that the Democratic Party actively was like renouncing at the time. Or, I mean, denouncing at the time. It's just like, I will forever fucking say January 6th was funny, because it was. Like, I understand why people are fearful of January 6th, because, like, if it was competent, if there was, like, a real brown shirt militia movement in this country, then that would have been, like, absolutely devastating. But in the absence of all of those things, like, and no, like, ideologically principled fascist movement, it's just all, like, you're never going to tell me that watching a bunch of HVAC business owners trying to climb up the fucking congressional wall and falling is the funniest thing you could have ever seen. It would have been better if the police were like actually there. You know what I mean? And then we could have seen like enforcement in real time. That probably would have made it so that it never happened. Like Ashley Babbitt would probably still be alive right now, running for like their fucking local comptroller of San Diego or some shit. If the actual cops were doing their fucking policing job. And by that I mean not what was I saying? Oh, the actual cops were, at the January 6th protest on the side of the protesters. I mean, like if there were cops in uniform stopping the protests from coming in.
On the Capitol. The other is people. Well, words have meaning. They describe events.
When leftists injure 100 cops, tear down barricades, throw fire bombs at the
White
White House.
Wait. But you're sequencing things differently. If Donald Trump was to send the military to attack, let's say, New York City, do I think that we would have a civil war? Yes. Do I think that New York City
Do you think he could? Do you think there's a possibility Trump would send the military into any one of these Democrat districts?
I mean, I don't know. Well, I mean, he claims he would.
Do you think he would? Or do you fear he would?
I fear that he would attempt to do it, but I suspect...
You think he would try to start a civil war?
Well, I didn't say he would try and start a civil war, but
that
I think
would
he
start a civil war.
Well...
Or could.
I think it could, but
so
I don't
think there's a possibility civil war is facing the sound.
No. I don't think the military would allow for that, frankly.
National Guard, or it's like, do you think they would disobey Donald Trump?
I think you'd get a series of resignations. Possible, I guess, that at one point, but
someone eventually is going to say yes, right?
If your argument is that the rise of Donald Trump could bring about a civil war, I mean,
I don't know that I would say the rise of Donald Trump. I think Trump's a symptom. I think that the reason Trump gets elected is because you have this rage bubbling up in this country in a variety of ways. So you had the Tea Party and you had Occupy Wall Street, which were rather light. But then you get the Bernie Sanders movement, you get the Trump populist movement. But Trump is a bull, and he storms through and he takes the power. Bernie didn't.
But I mean, they're saying that it's because they're both populist movements? I mean, one's a right-wing authoritarian movement.
Call it whatever you want. People rose up and had movements for whatever reason. And perhaps you could say because Trump is a strong man, he ended up succeeding in his movement where Bernie's did not.
Well, I mean, no, Bernie Sanders was
like Hillary Clinton's the authoritarian, and she stomped out Bernie.
No, Hillary Clinton is not an authoritarian. I mean, I don't like her politics, but authoritarian it's a word. It means something. Yeah. And right-wing authoritarians. I mean, there's been, you could check out Bob Altemeyer's research, formerly from the University of Manitoba. Like there's clinical research that shows that we have like something like 25% of North America are right-wing authoritarians, and they were just looking for a leader. And the Republican Party has been stoking racial animus for decades now, and this is where
that lead to civil war.
I mean, it certainly did, 200 years ago, but I think that the likelihood of civil war is low relative to the amount of times that you talk about it.
Well, I think it would require you to see what I talked about. Like, should I not opine on The Atlantic saying, quote, there's people that are absolutely ready to take on a civil war? What will happen if Trump loses from 1 week ago? If I address that and I say something like, I think it's silly to assume that within the next few months, people are going to start a civil war, is that a bad thing to do?
Dog, that's not how you opine on it. That's an opinion piece itself. You are literally pointing to that piece to say it's silly in the argument where you're trying to justify that it's not silly to say that a civil war is likely. Does Tim Pool hear the arguments that he's making? Am I misunderstanding him? Why has he so consistently like dunked on his own argument, it seems, or dunked on his own past behavior while simultaneously seemingly defending his own past behavior. I don't understand it.
Or should we just ignore it?
I mean, I think it's
ignore-
just indicative of like the what you consider the news is, and I think that's
Why are they all writing about it?
well, because they have the same problem that you did with your news outlet, is they can't get clicks.
Do you think the only reason all of these outlets, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that I just pulled up from a quick Google search, it's just they're getting clicks for it?
Yes.
I'm not it's not a gotcha. I mean, literally, it's like, it's just sensational.
The answer is yes. Yes.
I mean, I think like, when you think about the original,
Like, I'm thinking from my own personal experience. I've been covering the news professionally for the past decade, and I can't recall a single time where I was like, a civil war is imminent. Like, maybe as a joke, as a meme, in a haha moment, but like never. Like, I often talk about how awful American politics is. Like, so frequently, so consistently. I talk about the dangers of like misinformation, the dangers of a right-wing reactionary sentiment in this country. And I don't think there's ever been a fucking moment where I'm like, yeah, civil war is imminent, dude. Like, I just don't. Like, the only way that it happens is if, we experience an unimaginable economic shock. And even then, I don't think it's that likely. And with no recovery measures whatsoever implemented. Like, it would mean the entire global economy has to collapse. There is a reason why January 6th was fucking goofy. There is a reason why January 6th was goofy as fuck. Because Americans are far too comfortable.
Civil War, there was a huge economic investment in on the two different sides, right? One side wanted free labor, and the other side, aside from having other economic interests too, that wasn't aligned with having free labor. I don't think we have that same division here. Does that
Do we
mean
need to follow 1861 or 54 for a civil war to happen? Or is it possible to look at, say, the Bolsheviks, the Spanish Civil War, the French Revolution, this British Civil War?
I think it is unlikely in this country that we would have a civil war. Do I think that we could have, sort of like a constitutional crisis with someone like Donald Trump and the Republican Party? Yes, I do.
So academics right now believe that we are in what's called civil strife. Civil strife does not guarantee civil war, but it is the precursor to. So the civil rights era was a period of civil strife that did not result in a civil war. Bleeding Kansas was civil strife that did.
I mean,
result
in
a
the
civil war.
80s, we had something like 100 bombings, maybe 75 bombings that would, various
Civil
sort of-
strife. It comes
Yeah.
and goes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you've got Stephen Marsh, who wrote the book The Next Civil War. He's a liberal guy. He makes a lot of these predictions. I defer to him. I think he's wrong on a lot of his fact assessments in the granular scope of things, but he makes a lot of points that are correct. So we actually had this debate. I think it was it last week actually on civil war, conflict, and crisis. And one of the things I have to bring up is people try and look at the 1861 Civil War as if we must follow that trend for civil war to occur, when in fact, it's rare that you actually get civil war in that.
What would you do to stop this civil war?
Tell people not to do it, to go out and vote, to believe in the system, to vote for who you think is going to help bring accountability to this country,
You
denounce
think
and
there's no
reject
difference
violence.
in terms of the parties as to which one could bring about that could bring about a civil war?
I think both
do you
parties
think
hold
that
the
it's-
potential for it.
Do you think that like Kamala Harris would,
Takes two to tango.
Well, actually,
Oh my
it takes
God.
two to tango.
Oh
because
my
a tango
God,
is-
bro. I swear Republicans don't live on the same planet, dude. No. No. Kamala Harris is parading fucking Liz Cheney around and saying she's going to have a Republican in her fucking cabinet. Like, your brain has to be the size of a walnut to legitimately say it takes two to tango. Kamala Harris could very, very well bring about a civil war just as likely as Donald Trump. Is like, dude, come on. Your brain is pudding. It's tapioca pudding. That is so insane. Democrats don't even have like a messaging campaign that is against Republican policies, let alone that they would like actively urge to fight Republicans in the fucking streets. They don't even fight them in debates, dude. They hug them and kiss them in debates.
was a very intricate dance, but it doesn't take two people to start a war. I mean,
It does.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
What do you mean?
Well, it doesn't take two people to start a war.
So if country A invades country B, but country B just surrenders immediately, there's no war.
Well, obviously, people
War is a fight.
pushing. Yeah, I mean, I guess
it
in
could
that-
be more than two, like Syria, for instance. I think there was like 12 factions in the initial.
Well, tango, both parties are like engaged in the dance. But the fact of the matter is that you can go in and yes, you can invade. It's war, even if they surrender after people getting shot. Do you think that like Kamala Harris? Let me put it this way: who's more likely to bring out the military against the city between Harris and Trump?
Trump didn't do it in 2020. I don't know if I have a good answer.
You don't have an opinion on this?
I don't.
Trump didn't do it. What the fuck are you talking about? Yes, he did. He did. He sent Bortak. Trump used the marshals, federal marshals, to assassinate a guy who killed a Nazi in Portland. And then he fucking flexed. He was like, yep, I told him, go kill this guy. And then they did. What are we talking about? Donald Trump, when Donald Trump says he's going to use the military against enemies from within, I believe it. I don't think that is him embellishing. I don't think that's him exaggerating at all. Why do I believe it? Because he's done basically everything but that in his last administration. That's the one thing that remains. And at the time, Senator Tom Cotton was advocating to do just that. So there are people in his coalition, in his corner, that also want him to do that. At the time, they wrote about it in the New York Times. Tom Cotton wrote an article, a guest column in the New York Times.
I don't know if I have a good enough answer to say.
Well, I'll take whatever answer you. I mean, you don't
When
have
Trump
an opinion.
was presented with national riots, he did not invoke the Insurrection Act. He didn't send out the military. I'm not confident he has the strength, and I don't mean that in a positive way.
Who would be
like
more
the
inclined
guts.
to do it?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
You don't have an opinion on it.
I mean, I think it's
You're so disingenuous, Tim.
bait to be like Trump's the authoritarian, therefore he would, when he didn't do it. So the Democrats didn't do it at the Capitol. Trump didn't do it at the Capitol. Trump didn't do it in 2020. The National Guard was deployed by Democrats during the Ferguson riots. Could I make the argument that Democrats are more likely for that reason? I honestly have no idea.
Would you make that argument?
I wouldn't. I'd say there's pros and cons to make a guess as to who you think would be more likely to bring out the National Guard or invoke the Insurrection Act. Honestly, I don't know. What I will say is, it doesn't matter what you think is true. And
Mark Milley apparently, and I don't know.
Well, so-
Mark Milley is someone that you would trust, but he basically said that Trump told him to just shoot the rioters.
I mean, Hillary Clinton said, "We came, we saw, he died. Why don't you drone strike Julian Assange?" So Barack Obama killed Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki.
Wait. Yeah, no. I agree that Obama, those drone strikes were very problematic, but that's different than saying we're going to willy-nilly fire into protesters.
What I'm pointing out is that I'm not going to tell you your opinions are wrong and you should not have them. That's not the point of what I'm getting at with civil war. My point is you believe them, and you are allowed to believe them, and that's fine by me.
I'm just curious as to who you think. I mean,
don't
if you
trust
think
any
that
of
there's
these
The Anwar al-Awlaki conversation is so stupid because, one, that's a war crime. Okay, it is a unimaginable expansion of the powers of the presidency, and it was straightforward a war crime, an extrajudicious killing of an American citizen in the hands of the American state, which is what Obama did. The thing is, Donald Trump killed his sister. So what are you saying right now? Like everything that you could point to with respect to Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, who I actually, was it his daughter or his sister? No, Donald Trump killed the same person that Obama killed, his immediate family members. I think both are wrong. I think it's completely unacceptable. The difference between me and Tim is that he thinks it's acceptable. I guess he thinks it's acceptable or doesn't know that Trump did it.
going to be a civil war, or that there's a big potential for it. You don't see, there's no difference between Trump and Harris as to
Trump assassinated. Yeah. Daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki reported killed in Yemen raid. Nawar Anwar al-Awlaki, the 8-year-old daughter of former Al-Qaeda and the Arabian Peninsula leader Anwar al-Awlaki, was killed in a joint American UAE raid against the terror group on Sunday, according to the girl's family. Anwar al-Awlaki was a U.S.-born cleric who directed attacks against the U.S., was killed in a targeted drone strike in 2011. In that first drone strike, Barack Obama killed his son. Donald Trump then did another targeted strike where Donald Trump killed the daughter. I don't know why you guys thought I meant like Trump killed his own sister. I guess I said it stupidly. Anyway.
to the likelihood of a civil war, or who would start this war. You don't, there's
in 2020, Democrats held a war game, as reported by the Boston Globe. Are you familiar with this? Where Podesta and others, neocons, had come together.
In 2020.
Before the 2020 election, they held a war game, as reported by the New York Times and the Boston Globe, where they said, in the event Trump the event Trump wins, we should advocate for West Coast states to secede from the Union.
In 2020?
Yes. In 2020, before the election took place, a war game was held by prominent neoconservatives and Democrats, including John Podesta.
Oh, so you mean like a bunch of people who are out of government went into a room and
working on the campaign and said, what happens if Trump wins? And one of the proposals was Washington, Oregon, and California must secede from the Union unless Trump's government capitulates to our demands.
This is one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard in this conversation.
And that was just the most insane thing I'd ever heard.
They're not just going through a bunch of different people out of government are just going around. So your argument,
you say out of government, but campaigning for the office of the presidency is a big difference, right? Podesta is a big shot in the Democratic Party. It's not like he's not in power. These are private organizations, Republican or Democrat. The issue I'm saying is this: by all means, tell me I'm wrong, believe all of it, but
I just think it's fascinating you don't have an opinion on this.
Well, because I hear you, and
I mean, you have this knowledge that some Democrats who are out of power.
you keep saying that, but John Podesta is far from out of power.
Well, I mean, in 2020, he wasn't in the government.
He's a big shot in the Democratic Party, and he's basically has a lot of say in who gets to run and who doesn't, and where funding comes from.
Okay, he had power within the Democratic Party, but
he's saying if Trump wins, we will.
Well, wait, did Panetta say this, or this just there's like 14 different scenarios that are being gamed out, and because they're doing the war game, this is one of them that happens in this sort of completely hypothetical thing.
Why do you think they entertained the possibility of West Coast secession? Like, that's just stupid, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
it's a stupid thing for them to do.
I listen. Donald Trump had states competing over PPE during COVID. He completely abandoned this country at a time where there was.
The Transition Integrity Project was initially organized in late 2019 by Rosa Brooks, a law professor at Georgetown, former Pentagon senior official. Peaceful presidential transitions are seen as a hallmark of the Republican Party. Trump's own statements that fuel concerns about the peaceful transition of power. So they were trying to build a contingency plan specifically against Donald Trump. Like refusing to do a peaceful transition of power. Like, what could they do hypothetically? Like, they got together and they were like, what could we possibly do hypothetically to ensure that Donald Trump, does a peaceful transfer of power? Am I wrong? Isn't that what this is? Yeah, it's like, he's not wrong, dude. One of my D&D campaigns was a replay of the 2020 election, and it ended with all citizens being trans. These are also, most of these guys are right-wing too, which is kind of funny. Like the people that, yeah, it was like Bill Kristol, Max Boot, David Frum. I wonder, like, yeah, we got a bunch of fucking neocons who were like genuinely terrified about the future of American democracy because it'll, take away their toy. Good thing most of those guys are now completely firmly within the Democratic Party and have captured the Democratic Party entirely. So,
was a once in a lifetime crisis. And
what if Trump steals the election?
To the extent that if Trump steals the election,
what do you think would happen?
What do you mean by steal?
Let's say that Kamala Harris wins the popular. Here's a scenario that's playing out right now. Mississippi had a lawsuit. Fifth Circuit Court ruled that ballots received after Election Day, even if postmarked before, are illegal to count. This would have to go to the Supreme Court for final adjudication. But one scenario that is potential because of this is that Donald Trump is winning on Election Day. However, mail-in votes have yet to be counted, of course. This is what happened in 2020. Then, when those votes come in, Republicans sue, going to the Supreme Court, which you believe is right-leaning, and the Supreme Court says...
Wait. I believe it's right-leaning?
Do
you not believe it's right-leaning?
I'm not making a point about my or your belief. I'm saying...
You said you believe it's right-leaning. Really? It's right-leaning.
And I will say, as you have stated, the court is right-leaning, okay?
Thank you.
So my point is this. If Kamala Harris is losing on Election Day, but it is perceived that she will win when mail-in ballots come in the following day, but the Republicans sue, citing the Fifth Circuit Court. It goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court rules all of those votes for Kamala, which would give her the win, are out. Trump is now the president, despite losing the popular vote and the Electoral College. What do you think happens?
Well, we have a model for this. It was the year 2000, where all of the legal establishment was shocked that the Supreme Court intervened and prevented Florida from counting all the votes. And to the extent that we, past performance is no guarantee of future performance, but...
What does this mean? Al Jazeera Arabic breaking news. Pentagon deploying ballistic missile defense destroyers, fighters, tankers, and long-range bombers to the Middle East. Joe Biden has to be a sleeper for Trump, I swear to God. So B-52 bombers are, the big Monty. They What's the saying? If you see a B-52 bomber, don't worry, you're not the target. I mean, I think there are a smaller, or no, that's the B-2 bomber. No, not B-52, sorry. B-52 is still, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin ordered the deployment of additional ballistic missile defense destroyers, fighter squadron, and tanker aircraft, and several U.S. Air Force B-52 long-range missile bombers of the Middle East. The Pentagon said these forces will begin to arrive in coming months as the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group prepares to depart. I guess it is a response to the Israeli intelligence suggests Iran is preparing to attack Israel from Iraqi territory in the coming days, possibly before the U.S. presidential election, two Israeli sources tell me. I didn't realize when Elan News sent this in, I didn't realize it was Israeli sources claiming that. I thought it was actually Iranian sources saying that because they usually spell out their potential targets ahead of time. So if it's Israeli sources, then this might be something different. Nothing burger. There will not be strategic bombers flying over Iran. These things are about as vulnerable to air defenses as can be. Posturing and training rotation. B-2s are the real thing. And they fly out of USA, not the Middle East. B-52s are not really used against people who don't herd goats. I mean, who knows? I saw that my uncles are fighting after this combo. I know. It hurts my feelings.
The Democrats basically stood down.
Do you think Democrats would just stand down and let Trump come in?
I think I would be surprised if there weren't like a massive protests, and I think we would see states attempt to get more progressive and become more sustainable and not rely on the federal government as much. Yeah.
What if Trump sends in the military to start rounding up illegal immigrants?
Oh, I think that's going to be really, really ugly. In addition to being like a
you think
horrible,
if
horrible
troops are
thing
putting
for our
people on
economy.
buses and trains, the Democrats will just stand by and say this is
I
fine?
mean, if the Supreme Court basically says it's okay to deploy the military in the United States, I think that could be a problem. Now, you've just given me that scenario. Would you imagine Kamala Harris doing the same thing? Do you think that she would send the military to deport 11 million people?
No. She said she wants to recently. She said people
What?
who enter illegally will be quickly and immediately removed.
Oh, I was still on the political violence thing. I thought she did say that. Tim is right on this.
I think.
Well, of that 11 million people, 80% of them have been here for over 10 years. So, so how is it where you can so easily work up a scenario
where Donald Trump
instigates a civil war, but you can't with Kamala Harris, that you think they're the same?
Why do you say I couldn't?
All right, well, give me one.
So first of all, I don't really put a lot of weight on Kamala Harris. Right? She wasn't elected. The Democrats voted for her, so she was.
Well, I mean, it's either going to be her or Donald Trump as the president.
So with Trump in office, Trump is screaming at the top of his lungs, telling people what to do. With Kamala in office, she's surrounded by intelligence officials, military officers, and what we've seen thus far is the arrest of lawyers. The arrest of
lawyers.
Donald Trump's lawyers were arrested
for.
What's her face?
Wait, is he talking about like? Yeah, Donald Trump's lawyers have also literally distanced themselves from Donald Trump because they almost got caught. Is he talking about Sidney Powell? Please tell me you're not talking about Sidney Powell. That'd be pretty funny. Or Rudy Giuliani. Donald Trump's own personal lawyers in the classified documents with obstruction of justice case literally had to recuse themselves and actually stop being his lawyers because Donald Trump was trying to use them to hide documentation, to hide classified documents after the state had already figured out that he had classified documents, and he was just lying to them for no fucking reason. So this doesn't mean anything. It just means that like Donald Trump does often try to use his own fucking lawyers to do illegal shit, which of course there is a limitation to the attorney-client privilege. Like, you can't. Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, literally went to jail. You can't use your lawyers to do crime, dude. That doesn't mean that the state is wrong.
Jenna Ellis, was that her name? She got charged with RICO for simply being Trump's lawyer.
Really? That's did it hold up in court?
She ended up, I think she pleaded guilty. She ended up crying on TV, apologizing for having done it.
Yeah, now she's like anti-Trump too, isn't she? Am I crazy? Wasn't I on a fucking panel with this lady? By the way, I just realized I've been in direct contact with not one, but two of Donald Trump's former lawyers that got into legal trouble because of their dealings with Donald Trump, which is wild. You know? Why does he have so many fucking lawyers that are constantly getting into legal trouble? He's burning through them.
They included her in RICO because she filed paperwork on Trump's behalf for his election claims.
Oh, because she knew they were false.
No, I don't think that was what she was charged with. She was charged with RICO counts 1 and 2, which was participating in
a conspiracy to defraud the United States.
And so the issue then becomes, if you're a lawyer and you are retained by someone who says, here's the argument I want to make, and you go, okay, then they criminally charge you for it. That's a huge step over the line.
Well, if you're involved in fraud, then yes, that's always been the case.
If you're not,
is this the first time that a lawyer has ever been subjected to something like that in a fraud case like that?
Not sure, but his other lawyers got charged too in Wisconsin. So it's you know what? By all means, Sam.
Wait.
Go ahead and tell him that she deserves it. Say she deserves it.
She deserves it.
Okay, now, what do you think Trump supporters will respond with when they see Trump's lawyers, former staffers, Navarro, Bannon being put in prison?
Certainly, supporters don't like, people being going to jail. But I mean,
why didn't Merrick Garland go to jail for contempt of Congress?
Why didn't?
Dude, what an insane fucking line of reasoning. Does Tim Pool not realize that a lawyer cannot legally participate in a crime? Does Tim Pool think that when you're a lawyer, that means you're like above the law? Does Tim Pool think that if you have a lawyer that you have retained, you can get them to do whatever you want and they have to agree to it, even if it's a direct crime? Did this motherfucker not watch Saul Goodman? Like, did he not watch Better Call Saul? You know what happens, right? Did you not watch the last season? Here's the fault with Sam's prior SCOTUS argument right there. And it's that SCOTUS can say what Trump is doing is unconstitutional. Trump can just do it anyway. And there's nothing anyone can do because it's within his official duties, citing national security concerns. If he starts rounding people up and deporting and offing them, there's nothing the system can do. No, that's not true. Attorney-client privilege? No, the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court has given additional allowances to the president, but that doesn't mean that the president is like above prosecution no matter what. It just means that there is an additional safeguard for a president to do crimes and claim that it is a presidential act. That doesn't mean that a president could just like shoot someone in the head and then get away with it. There would still be, you would still have to take it back up to the Supreme Court to be like, is this a presidential act or was this not a presidential act? Previously, you didn't have to make that assessment. You were like, that's illegal. You're going to jail. But the Supreme Court made it so that they were basically the final check against, if they want to, the final line of defense that determines whether or not this is a prosecutable act or not. Anyway.
He go to jail for contempt of Congress?
Yeah.
What you mean from the Justice Department?
Yeah, the was it the her investigation or was it I'm getting the name wrong? He was held in contempt of Congress, I think, twice.
There's been a lot of people who've been held in contempt of Congress that haven't gone to prison.
So the issue right now is Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon go, and when Merrick Garland defies Congress, he does not.
I think government officials probably get away with this more because we had we had members of Congress who also.
That is a fine argument.
But wait.
It's a fine argument. But
we're getting off the original question was.
And the question is, do you think Trump supporters are going to accept this as true, that it's just government officials getting.
I don't know. I've seen Trump supporters believe a lot of very strange things, like John F. Kennedy is in the
I'm sure this has happened, but in recent history, I can't think of a single fucking Republican or Democrat or any like person that holds office that has ever been prosecuted in contempt of court for being in contempt of Congress. Like, I don't think has that happened like to a. I can't remember. I'm sure there might be, and I'm certain that it's probably happened throughout history, but. I don't think that it's happened in recent times. Like, Steve Bannon is not a elected representative, chat, or even like an appointed person. Steve Bannon is a fucking random nut job. What do you mean, Steve Bannon? And also, we're talking about contempt of Congress. That's what Tim Pool brought up. Tim Pool brought up contempt of Congress. Like, why is Merrick Garland not in prison for being in contempt of Congress? Like, as in not showing up to a congressional hearing.
Junior is in the audience.
That is, the magazine.
Yeah, I mean, so I have no idea how to predict. But again, the question I ask: do you think can you come up with a scenario where Harris instigates a civil war in the way that you talked about with Trump doing it?
The Harris administration, yes.
Okay, and what? Like, let me hear it.
The expansive arrest and prosecution of Donald Trump, his supporters, and those associated with his movement.
Well, Bannon went.
I'm gonna say something controversial. I'm gonna say something controversial here and say that Tim Pool, I think was able to successfully gish gallop his way out of giving Sam some good dunks. Like, I think Sam was too nice to him. And because of that, it just comes across as like a 3-hour conversation that I think if Tim like showed some more energy on instead of being nice, I think Sam would have fucking slammed him up and gummed up the works and packed him up in like 15 minutes. Keep watching. The energy flips at a point. Where does the energy flip?
This is going to come from the right. Verse.
Because this is still, they're still talking about this shit.
15% benefits. But it's not necessarily younger people are going to have to pay money.
New workers will have to.
No. They're always going to have to pay, hopefully, with Social Security, unless the Republicans have their ability to cut it. But
Oh, you're right. It actually says 83%. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would put some things to rest. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean,
Trump is saying it should be a state's issue, and I believe that is absolutely incorrect.
No, I think we had an individual right that existed in this country for 50 years, and it was rolled back. We've never had anything like that whatsoever. I think it's a right that when taken away, deprives people who have babies their sovereignty over their own body, and it's both an economic issue and a personal liberty issue.
What do you think there should be restrictions
on abortion?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with restrictions, like for instance,
this is the normal response to this is no, but the optically best possible response to this is not a no, because when you say no to no, like when you say no to that question, I know a lot of women are going to get mad, but when you say no to that question, immediately you have to remember that like the fucking worst idiots will go, oh, you want to have a fun abortion on the last trimester. So you have to be careful in the way that you communicate. If your goal is to change the minds of a lot of people, okay? There is no such thing as a fun abortion, right? Like, people are not just voluntarily getting an abortion after carrying a pregnancy almost to term, because the process in which you carry a pregnancy is also very complicated and can cause a lot of harm to the carrier, okay? So it makes no fucking sense for people to basically almost carry a pregnancy to term and then get an abortion for funsies in the last trimester. Republicans present it as though that is happening all the fucking time. So the answer to that is when someone says no restrictions on abortion, the best optical answer is that these decisions should be left to the medical professionals and the medical community, and that the government should not intervene in this process. You do not have a say in whether or not people get insulin if they have diabetes. That is left to the doctors. So you should not have a say in this process as well, because the abortion, a medically induced miscarriage, an abortion is a medical procedure. Okay? That's it. So that is the best possible way to respond to it. And I'm sure Sam will do that as well.
Say only in the case of, let's say, a danger to a woman, or a woman's life, is that is extremely difficult to assess where that line is. And we've seen this. 2 women have died at least in Texas as a function of the abortion ban that they have there. We also know that infant mortality in the wake of the Texas thing, because there's been studies on this, increased 15% in the wake of the abortion ban there. So in general, I would say that restrictions are in practice not viable, not doable, because you end up costing women their lives. I think that to the extent that I would have restrictions, I think you need a medical provider to provide abortions, in that go past the maybe midway through the second trimester.
Do you think that with elective abortion should be available up to 9 months?
If it is I think that is the safest route for women if it is done by a medical provider. Yeah.
Elective. I asked elective, to be clear.
Elective.
Meaning no reason given, no medical issues, just a woman saying, you know what,
I've carried this baby for 8.5 months and I've changed my mind.
Well, that's a little crass way of putting it. I think some women are going through some serious crises in their lives and they may make a decision that's a bit more than just they've changed their mind. Like, for instance, where a woman is being battered by her husband and then she realizes at month 6 that if she has this kid, he's going to continue to beat and harm the child and she can't stay with him or something.
Well, I think, I'm not going to assess people's reasons for having an abortion. It's not really my business. But I think that having restrictions ends up.
But morally speaking, just because the innovation is now easily accessible and available, does it make the act right? Yes. In regards to the morality, just because innovation is improved to the point that it is easily accessible and possible, does it mean the act is right? Yes. Yes. The answer is absolutely yes. What do you mean? What is the counter argument against this? Moving with the times. What are you saying? I treat abortions, medically induced miscarriages, in the same exact way that I treat any other medical procedure. I think that the medical innovation in this field is completely and utterly irrelevant. And I think that this decision should be left to the healthcare professionals and the patient themselves. I'm saying that diabetes and abortion are 2 different things. I'm saying that that's not correct. It's up to you to tell me why it's a different thing. They are both medical procedures that save the life of the carrier, that save the life of the person. Like, it's medical intervention that professionals have decided is the appropriate response. Not only is it that in circumstances most things are allowed, so yeah, you're right. Wait, what? Okay, so what, you conceded? I don't understand. All right. I guess cool. I don't know what you're arguing against. You just said I'm right, I think.
Costing women's lives, and so I would, on balance, not have restrictions outside of, obviously, particularly as you get further into the pregnancy, requirements about medical certified medical providers.
So let's say you have a scenario: a woman goes to a Planned Parenthood, 6 months pregnant, and she just says, I don't want to explain it, I just would like to get an abortion. Is that a...
Can we leave diabetics out of this nonsense? Why? What are you, scared that the Republicans are going to start fucking denying you insulin? No. I think it's a perfectly apt and appropriate fucking analogy in this circumstance. It's just like a readily accepted, have been for years. Okay, fair. We're not talking about fucking lack of Medicare for all or how expensive insulin is. We're talking about like we're talking about straight up like one party deciding like insulin is unconscionable, insulin is ungodly.
She should be allowed. There should be just medical professionals who say we're going to do it. We're not going to ask you why.
I think I think it's okay to.
Like the answer to this is there's already restrictions to third trimester abortions in almost every single state, and that is because it is a medically invasive procedure, and it's a risky procedure as a matter of fact, and that is precisely the reason why you can't just you can't do an over-the-counter third trimester abortion. There is a lot of visits to the doctor leading up to this decision, and it's ridiculous. It's no different than hormone replacement therapy. Like Republicans act like you can just walk to your nearest pharmacy and just be like, testosterone now, please, or estrogen now, please. And then they're like, oh, I'm too woke. I have to give it to you. Like, that's not how that works. You know what I mean? It's very stupid. You're just arguing against the reality that does not exist, right? Dude calling me conceited. Conceit, though you are well-spoken, don't get it twisted. Dude calling me conceited, arrogant. You can't just name call dick. No, dude, I said you conceded. I didn't say like concede, to concede. Like you agreed with me, so I don't know why we should argue any further. You said I am right. What the fuck? Dude, oh my God, my fucking haters, man. What is happening, bro? What is that? Open the schools. Open the schools. Abolish homeschooling. Open the schools. We need to leave children behind. Okay. The No Child Left Behind policy failed. Okay. We need to leave children behind. Like we need to keep them getting the education. Oh my God.
To explore it and get a sense, as you would for any type of like medical procedure.
What does that mean? Like,
I think that there's an obligation within the context of like ethical practice of medicine to
not just terminate a baby at 6 months without reason.
Well, no, I'm not saying that they should adjudicate this, but I don't think that like necessarily medical providers are going to be just like hop up here, we'll just do this right now. I mean, I think there are procedures in which they do it, but essentially, as long as it's like sort of like they're following medical procedures. Like, I don't think that somebody can, walk in here at 6 months and say to you, like, can you get rid of my baby? And you're allowed to do it.
No, but like, I'm just asking, like, should there be a time limit, like 16 weeks?
I think that is, that endangers women too much. So the answer is no. I don't believe so.
Yes. Any additional regulation or restriction brought about by the state endangers the life of the carrier that is making a oftentimes complicated medical decision with a medical provider. Okay? It's that simple. You are putting people's lives on the line for no fucking reason other than winning political brownie points with a tiny group of people that are very, very strong and overrepresented in the Republican Party's base of support. That's it. The overwhelming majority of Americans do not agree to this. So much so that state by state, they have refused to go along with these restrictions. They voted against these restrictions. They voted to preserve and protect at least Roe v. Wade in virtually every state where it's been on a ballot measure. Can speak from experience as the wife and I have been trying to have care after a miscarriage, and it's going on 2 months of doctor following laws and regulations. This was at 8 weeks and we still can't move on with our lives. Yeah. Being pro-life is the biggest virtue signaling group on the planet. Yeah, I mean, they're not pro-life. They're pro-forcing women to carry pregnancy is the term. They are anti-choice. They're not pro-life. They're anti-choice. Because if they were pro-life, there is a whole litany of different things that they'd be advocating for, like gun control, for example. Like the average Republican is certainly not pro-life. They're pro-death more than they're pro-life. Let's be real. You got owned in the marketplace of delusion. It's true. I did.
So, but that would create a circumstance, be it as rare as, it may be, but where there's like an 8-month abortion.
It's conceivable. I mean, certainly in the 8th or 9th month. I mean, here's the thing. In the 8th or 9th month, you can, you may find that.
Like the overwhelming majority of third trimester abortions are being done, like damn near every single one are being done to people that have already chosen the fucking like baby crib. You know what I mean? To people that have already, to couples or to parents that have already like decided on a name for the child. This is a medical intervention. It is a medical necessity. Okay. And it is an invasive surgery. It is an invasive surgical procedure. Okay. 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester, and it's as uncomplicated as taking a pill. Okay. It's much simpler than you would think. But in the extreme rare instances of a third trimester abortion, I can't begin to explain to you how fucking rare this is. All right. This is a already psychologically traumatic experience because in virtually every single one of those cases, they want to carry the pregnancy to term. So you're basically shutting off or adding unnecessary complications to a family that have wanted to have the child, okay, and now can't have the child for one reason or another, usually some serious harm to the fucking carrier or it's like stillbirth or some shit like that, okay? And they're trying to get this medical procedure, and now Republicans are like, sorry, we've decided like you can't do that. Okay, now you're fucking killing the carrier. You're killing a woman. Okay? Why are they so obsessed with abortion? I'm from outside the US. Is it to make sure the white population does not reduce? I think a lot of it has to do with controlling what women can and can't do. I think it's like a way to try and like punish women into behaving in a more like tradcath way of life, only have sex to procreate, like do not have recreational sex, that type of shit. America is very puritanical. That's what it is. Hold on. Isn't it weird we have to debate about whether certain medical practices should be allowed just based on vibes? Yes, it is weird. It is fucking weird. It's really, really weird to me, at least. Like, Rainy draws a lot. Thank you for the 25, get the subs. I don't understand it. I think it is, to me, there is virtually no difference than like Republicans being like, oh, we've decided we're all Christian medicalists now. You know what I'm talking about? Like Christian scientists, Christian medicalists that believe that you need to pray every fucking ailment away. Like if you have an illness, you just pray it away. You can't do like real medical intervention. And they've just, like, if the 30% evangelical base within the Republican Party just like decided to lean in that direction, and then the Republican Party responded by nationalizing a Christian medicalist approach, and then started genuinely stopping the process of just like doctors operating. That is what this is. And it sounds fucking insane when I, make an analogy like this, but that is what's happening with abortion. That's what's happening with fucking trans care. Like, that's literally what is going on. It's all about enforcing a certain standard of life that 30% of the nation, many of which don't even fucking uphold themselves, but like 30% of the nation wants to enforce upon the rest of the country. And it's very, very insane. It's very conservative, it's very reactionary, it's very stupid, but it doesn't matter because, the Democrats have to concede the Republicans, and the Republicans love conceding to the most primal, most barbaric nature of the most active base of support. We are held hostage by some of the fucking craziest people in this country. Yeah, 0.02% of all abortions happen in the third trimester. That's 1 in 5,000. And in those final 13 weeks, it just becomes more and more rare because, like you said, at that point, the people want to carry the child to term. Yes.